Welcome to the third episode of the Nurture with Grace podcast with yours truly, John and Ruth Kiama.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. So today's episode, we wanted to explore the reason why a lot of people struggle to get support. And if you're a parent and you're struggling to get support, or you're struggling to get the help you need to support your child, we want to tell you that we understand this whole process. It can be really complicated and it can be really, really overwhelming. And I think part of the process is, yes, there is a lot of things you have to do to get support, but then there's a lot of internal things that you have to come through to terms with before you're able to get support.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just wanted to sort of just share, obviously it's been part of our journey, some of the things we've gone through, some of the things that we are also aware. And yeah, we also quite happy to hear your thoughts and see whether you relate with us or you're just learning. So yeah, join us on this journey.
We've actually got some notes because we don't want to be blabbering around saying stuff. So we thought we'll get a bit organized and have some notes and talking points to make sure we're able to give you the best information we can. So before the diagnosis, you might be feeling like maybe there's something here, but I'm not sure where to get started. The way I look at it is, from our journey, we struggled. We knew something was not going wrong, but it took us a while to get the support we needed. And I wouldn't say it was about the system or the healthcare system. There was a lot of internal stuff. So that's where I wanted to sort of talk about. So I feel like the first part of the reason why we struggle to get support is maybe there's a lot of stigma around before the diagnosis. Can you relate to that, Han?
Yeah, so there's, lots of denial and self-doubt.
Yeah.
So, as we said, we saw some signs at the beginning, but then we just thought, he's young, he will grow out of it.
Yeah.
So we sort of just downplayed that and thought, just give it time. Obviously, and it is a mixture of hope and fear.
Yes.
And we thought, all right, let's just wait a little bit longer.
Yeah. And I think what will happen is the journey was a little bit deceptive because he would go through these big growth spurts whereby we would see a lot of changes. And even that happens even now, where you go through a lot of changes and you see like a bunch of improvements within a span of about a month. And then we have some sort of like either some sort of stagnation. So we would see those happen and we'll be thinking, we're just about to reach the threshold. We'll be fine. Everything's going to be great. We don't need to. We can delay this decision a bit further. So that kind of hope and self-doubt, I think that was the other one. And I feel like the other one we struggle with was that fear of labeling our child. It's kind of like once you label a child and say, my son is autistic, it kind of, right now we've done a lot of work internally to be able to sort of have that acknowledgement. But even having those words coming out of our mouths and feeling like you're labeling your child, it kind of feels so permanent, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think this sort of relates with many other areas. It's kind of, there's a label, there's a diagnosis, there's this, it means this, it means that.
What does it mean?
Yeah, what does it mean? You shouldn't say that word. So it is a big part of the stigma and the label. And I know a lot of conversations around this area. It's like, we shouldn't say that because we are labeling a child. But in essence, that's not the case.
Yeah, that's something we struggled with. I'll have to admit that's something I just, and I think when we talk to people, they'll be like, the problem is people, they'll just label your child. So I think it's something we're really struggling. So if you're struggling with that, I can say it once again, we really, really totally understand what you might be going through. The other thing I feel that plays a part in why people struggle to get support is some sort of fear of judgment. I don't think this was much for us, but we've noticed a lot of people who fear that. Like when you talk to a lot of parents, they fear like, what are people going to think about us? Can you talk into that? Because you're the one who's probably had most conversation with a lot of parents or listened to a lot of stories around that.
Yeah, so I suppose a lot of people sort of just feel like, your child will be treated differently. Your child might not be accepted by society. All of a sudden there'll be all these things that, there's this blanket rule. They might be allowed, they might not be allowed. So there's that judgment that sort of keeps parents sort of thinking, okay, maybe I'll just protect my child and just stay safe and not say anything and just pray and hope that things get better. So so we get that as well.
And I think for us it was the same. Those early days when we started noticing the sign, there's a part of us that tried to contain that within ourselves. And I remember it was really hard for us to even go out because we don't know how we're going to be able to handle our son being able to be out there with kids and what that looks and how that reflects on us as parents. Because I think what happens is the way your kid behaves tend to be a reflection on yourself as a parent, and that's something we've internalized as parents. So we don't want to be out there. We don't want to be out there because we know our kid is definitely not going to behave like the normal neurotypical kid, and there's that fear, and that can potentially keep people from getting support. And when I talk about support, I think I'm talking support from medical support, getting support from within a community, getting diagnosis. So that's what I'm talking about.
And there's one more, society's unspoken expectations.
Yeah.
So, because obviously as a society, there's what we call the society norms. So when, for example, observed our child is, some things are not your norm, whatever is called the norm.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, something is different here. So we get that reluctance. You don't want your child to sort of be labeled, people saying they're different. You're kind of hoping, okay, we'll just walk through this, it'll get better. So there's those fears as well, which keep parents not seeking for help because you think, we'll just wait and it'll go away.
I think another reason is people feel like once your kid is diagnosed, they will start to miss out on other things. So for example, they might be able to miss out on being with other children or sort of facilities that are deemed for normal, in quotes, neurotypical kids. So you feel like if you have that diagnosis, like what's going to happen? Does that mean now all of a sudden he has to go to these special facilities? No, you can still enjoy all the other things, but that's the thing that potentially is holding a lot of people back. I feel for us, especially in our culture, there is a lot of cultural and religious misconceptions, and we have encountered a lot of them, from a cultural point of view. And we've had people tell us, that is for a certain group of people, not us. We've had, from a religious point of view, people who actually blatantly will not acknowledge that this is something. It's something you just need to pray about and move on.
Yeah, and it's quite common, which is quite surprising, even to people like I would expect who are very educated, but I think it's probably they're educated, but they're probably not educated about autism, so they do not fully understand it. It's, like we've come across even YouTube videos of people saying, no, autism is something to be prayed out of a child. And some parents actually, and we're not saying prayers don't work. As we said, we are of Christian faith. We believe in prayers. We pray every day. We have families praying for us. But I think it's also just that lack of understanding that this is the way the brain is wired, rather than we'll just pray and it'll go away, and you feeling like the child is not what they should be. So we came across that, which was very interesting. It's challenging as well, because people will, and they genuinely mean well. A
Absolutely.
lot of these people, they mean well, like we understand. But so I suppose those things will keep parents not going to seek help, because they'll be thinking, I'll just stay home and pray and wait. So so that has been and as we said, culture as well. There's some people who believe this only happens to certain cultures, but not other cultures. Especially in the African culture, people believe it doesn't affect the African community, but actually it does. It affects everybody.
It does. It does not discriminate based on who you are. So, and look, once again, this is no judgment. You could be in a place whereby maybe that's all you know. And I think there's a point you mentioned about you've met a lot of people who are very educated, and I think what happens, and I'm going to speak as a parent here, is you can be the most educated, the most with all the facts in the world, but when it comes to parenting, all that goes through the window. It's because it's a very emotive game. It's all about emotion. You could be, have it all together, and then something happens, you become misregulated. So a lot of parents, we are running on emotions. So there might be someone who might be thinking, oh, why can't I? There might be someone who might be listening to this and this. I know the facts. I know I should be doing this. And why can't I just not snap myself out of it? I'm like, no judgment. We understand this is not an intellectual process. It's a very emotive process. And if you're feeling that overwhelming emotion and that's kind of holding you back, I get it. We totally get it, because we've been there. And even now, we're still there, I would say. We go through a whole lot of emotions from time to time. And it's not a very intellectual, even with all the facts and education we've put ourselves through. Another misconception I feel, and like I said, it's something that I think that's probably more common than ever. It's like when people think it's just a phase, this will go away. It's just a phase. They're just going through this. It will disappear. They'll grow out of it. So no need to do that. And I feel like for us, even though we knew we needed to get some help, there's a big part of us that did that. Because remember, before we booked the first diagnosis. We booked the first ASD, like ASD is Autism Spectrum ASD test. We booked the first test and we had a date. And then during that time, we started to see like a lot of changes, and we canceled the test and we're like, no, let's postpone it until next year and see what happens. Maybe he'll grow out of it. Maybe we're not going to need this test after all. Maybe everything's just going to be fine. I think we've been through that.
Yeah.
So, and I think our recommendation, and probably what has worked for us, is this process can be very deceptive. Your kid might go through like a lot of big growth spurts, and it might be deceptive to think maybe it's time for me to stop doing the things we're doing to support the kid, or maybe not. I don't need to get that because it will work itself out. But I'm glad we persisted. I'm glad we still went ahead with it. Because if we didn't do it, I think it would have been a big disservice to us. And then the other thing as well, it's parents internalize shame. So every parent was the best for their child. And one of the things that we are learning through this process is we also needing to grow and learn and face our internal struggles, issues, whatever it is. And I think every parent knows when you get a child, it really challenges you to the core. So sometimes, as a parent, because you want to give your child the best, and sometimes you're not able, or there's things, or there's these challenges that come across, which, usually will feel, why can't I get on top of this challenge? So sometimes we end up feeling guilty. We end up feeling embarrassed about a situation, for example, having our child out in a park or doing something, and then he has a huge meltdown, especially those when he was a bit younger, because back then, before he had words, he would get lots of meltdowns. So, you're out in the park, or you're maybe shopping, or, somewhere in public, and then he has this meltdown, and you're trying to deal with it, and it's very challenging. So, there's that. You feel embarrassed as a parent. You're like, oh, I don't want to be going through this. So there's that feeling of, just take my child home and just forget about shopping. I'm not going to take my child shopping. I'm not going to take my child to the park. I'll just go home, stay home. I'm not going to go I
won't go anywhere. I'll lock myself in. And there is And we get that. We understand that feeling if you're in that stage of your life right now. As again, we said, no judgment. We get it. So there is that internal shame, which, you know, as parents, we have to work through and identify where that's coming from, just so that we can get to that point of, I need to actually help my child, because this is nothing about me.
It's not about me.
It's not about me.
Yeah, it's not about you.
And just knowing, you know, this child is not an extension of myself. You know, this child is a different person to me, and I need to actually just, you know, learn what's going on, and I need to actually find help. But we, as I said, we understand when it's that challenging.
It is challenging. And I like the point you mentioned about, you know, we feel like we can do anything. We want to do everything for our child. But it's also good to, at some point, and that's something we have to come to terms with, is there are some things you can do as a parent, even though we would give our own lives to do everything for our children. And there's no point beating ourselves up, because that's something we've had to sort of do, to say, okay, I need help. I need help. I've tried everything I can here. I think I need somebody else to help me out here. So you don't have to feel like you need to do everything. I think another point I wanted to mention about shame is there's a part of us that will probably be questioning, is this something that I've done that has contributed that to my kid being this way? And I remember when we were starting out, you know, because you had a really, you know, traumatic birth with that child, and there's a part of you that thought, oh, could that be why that's whatever, and I'm sure you had to sort of work through that yourself, so, and realize that, you know, there's nothing you could have done, there's nothing you could have done. So it's also about like making sure that, like I said, there's a lot of work internally that we have to do as parents, and we've done a lot of that work, and we're still working through all those things to make sure that we're able to remind ourselves, like I said, our child is not an extension of us. He's a completely different human being, having a completely different human experience with their own needs and stuff. And like I said, there's a lot of other people who can help as well. The other part that I find that a lot of people struggle to get help is navigating through the healthcare system can be a little bit complicated. And for us, we're very lucky. We live in Australia, whereby we have the NDIS system, which takes care of a lot of those things. But even getting into the system and understanding what you need to do, that took us a while. We're very lucky we had friends and people who could actually guide us into terms of how to do it. But it would have been a process, isn't it?
Yeah. So, and as we said, having even, for example, our child being in childcare was a blessing, because they were among the first people who noticed, you know, he had some differences. Having friends who sort of noticed, and they kind of told us, yep, they've noticed something. So that was a big help for us, which again is one of the reasons we've also decided to do this podcast, because, you know, hopefully this might help somebody who maybe is in that moment, not sure, but just wondering, and just needing that little encouragement of, go for help, go get that help. So we are very privileged. We are in a country where autism awareness is out there. It's being talked about, and as John said, like, we've got those supports from the government. So we are very grateful for that as well.
And we know that it's not everyone who's got access to those kind of stuff. So it's a matter of looking for information wherever you are. And we do understand that a lot of families, there's a lack of resources. You know, there's a lot of lack of resources. And that's why we're hoping that with this podcast, maybe we can start to link some of those resources that we found useful, whether it's a book, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a YouTube channel. I found that in the early days before we ever got to therapy, there was a lot of really good YouTube channels that I would go to get a few little tips, and then you would watch a lot of like little Instagram clips, and we would follow a lot of people. So you might not be in a country where there's like a clear system to do that, but it's just a matter of finding out and seeing how you can be able to support. And part of it, a lot of parents are apprehensive when you're going towards the whole diagnosis process, and that's what stopped them stop them from going and getting that support, is because while it was not a big factor for us, there's a lot of people who fear that my kid might be misdiagnosed, and it has happened. There's a lot of people who've been misdiagnosed. Maybe they were given the wrong level, or maybe they've been assessed as level 1 where they're level, and vice versa. And then, because you see, when you get assessed and the level they give you, that can determine how the kind of support you get and how the rest of the system is able to treating your child. So there's that fear. And I think for us, we're very lucky. We kind of went to one of the largest one. I think it's called Adelaide Pediatrics. So it's a matter of, we found it's just a matter of doing your research and finding out what sort of company is going to do your assessment, but also trusting the healthcare system as well. These people, that's what they do for work, I guess. As we wrap up, I wanted to suggest a couple of strategies that maybe you can apply if you're struggling through the whole process, and what's really worked for us.
Yeah, so we have found just validating your parental instincts. As a parent, you're the best person who knows your child. You know when they're suffering, when they're not well, you see when they're not coping. So as a parent, there's an instinct that tells you, oh, there's something here, I'm not sure what it is. Just trusting those instincts and sort of going, maybe I need to find a bit more information on this. I might not fully understand it. Because sometimes you might talk to other people and they might just tell you, oh, don't worry about it. But deep down in your heart, you're like, there's just something, but I don't know what it is. So trust your instincts and seek that help. And, if the first person tells you something you're not sure, maybe it could be a doctor or a different medical practitioner, go for a second opinion if you're not sure or if you don't feel comfortable. That might be helpful.
Another thing we found for us is starting to build your own community. If you have any concern and you're not sure what it is, how the whole process works, it might be a case of like talking to other parents who are already doing that. There's a lot of groups around. For us, we were very lucky. We had really close friends of ours like Ken and Jen who were able to sort of support us through the journey. We had, lots of different friends. You've got your friend Sheena and many other people who were able to sort of just give us, we're very lucky we had really close friends who could shine lights into this process, and there was a lot of less stigma in the process. So I think even watching content like this to educate yourself about the whole process, what have you found? Or is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, and I think, as I said, content, because initially when you start, it's overwhelming. You start maybe just reading about it, maybe it's Google, and then you're like, oh, there's so much information. So you read, and then it's kind of like, okay, head smart, but then it's like, I've got all these emotions to work with. Because that's what I found, like for me, I Googled and, all the other medical information. But then I thought, okay, this is what it says, but then how am I going to navigate this journey? And there's a lot of information, but through Instagram, I was able to find a lot of families who've put their stories up there, sharing their journey. So you're actually in a position where you can actually see them walking that journey. And as we said, every child is different. But there's similarities when it comes to autism. So some of these clips I would watch and I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen my son do that. I've seen that. Okay, yep, that parent is going through this. And yeah, so what that content did for me, it helped me feel seen. It helped me feel validated. It helped me feel, okay, I'm not the only one going through this. Because when you're in that state, trying to find yourself, you feel like, oh my goodness, I'm the only one. The bottom. I'm not sure how I'm gonna get out of this. But I was like, oh, there's thousands of other people doing the same. And the more I watched that content, the more I was able to see from young kids to older kids and parents. There's lots of great support networks online because we are walking through the same journey. And very helpful information. I mean, like anything out there, social media has the good and the bad. So we've got to be prepared to pick the good, what's helpful. So that for me has been like, even now, I'm always my social media, pretty much if I'm on social media, on Instagram, I'm literally following autism parents. So very helpful for me, I found.
Yeah. And I think the message here is we understand as a parent, this is a journey, right? And you might need a minute, just figure it all out and take it all in before you get the help you need. So we understand that. So it's not a case of, yes, we're not trying to say that, okay, we've given you all this information, all right, get onto it. We understand that you might need to sort of absorb a few things and just figure it out in your head. Because we went through that whole process of having to sort of try and figure it all out and trying to see what that means to you. So if you're processing that, and that is maybe stopping you from rushing out to get help, I think that's okay. It's okay to tell people that it's okay to just figure it all out, take it all in, and just kind of work out what that means for you and your family. Because especially, for us, we are really lucky right now. We're dealing with this before we've got other kids, so we're able to give our kid 100% support. But it could be a case of maybe other families we talk to who they've already got other siblings, and then they're trying to work out how does that mean between supporting the other siblings and it's already challenging enough as a parent, and then supporting this. So we do understand if you need to just chill out, take a minute, figure it all out for yourself and take it all in and stuff like that. And if you need to talk to a friend, if you need to get therapy for this, because the problem with this is there's a lot of emotions that go through that you go through, and if you need to take a minute, do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's good to allow yourself to be and know what you're going through is okay. Like, you go through this is the one journey that takes you through all the emotions, all the highs you can, and we'll talk about it. It's not all challenges. There's a lot of beauty, which we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But it's sort of yourself, you're having to relearn yourself. So just acknowledge and just know that that's okay. And being open and honest about your needs as well is something worth sort of, looking for, asking for help. It's actually okay to ask for help. And sometimes people don't know what help to give. Sometimes it's just good to tell them, could I get this help? Could someone maybe make me a meal when you're probably not able to make yourself a meal because you're tired and exhausted and you're very busy and you've probably had 5 meltdowns in a day. So being open and honest about your needs.
And I think for us, what's really helped is removing that emotional type stuff away from it. Because a lot of it, like I said, you go through the guilt cycle, or this is feeling bad, and now that means I'm a bad parent, I should be doing this, I'm a bad parent, and you start to internalize that, then you start spiraling around, and we have had a lot of spirals ourselves. I feel like you and I have also had our own version of meltdowns. At the end of the day, what's really helped us is to learn to embrace the diagnosis. It is not a sentence. It's not a bad sentence on your child. It just means they are different. It just means now we go on this journey. And we do everything we can to support our child to have the best life they can be. It also comes down to us looking after ourselves, and we do understand this is tough for a lot of parents, especially people who are doing this on their own. Like, we're very lucky we're doing this together, and we do know that this can put a lot of pressure on a family. We've seen couples who this has been the reason why, this is the thing that has caused the demise of their relationship, and we really, our heart goes out to you. And some people who are doing this by themselves, so we're really lucky that we are doing this as a family. So it's about having those conversations, isn't it?
Yeah.
And working out, okay, what does this mean for us as a couple? What does that mean for us as a family? And how do we go on this journey? Like I said, if you need to get any help or counseling, there's lots of resources available, because this is something, once you go on this journey, it will have a lot of impact.
Yes. And and again, give yourself compassion and grace.
Yes.
Because you will have a lot of highs and a lot of lows, and just knowing that it's okay, it's normal, and it's one day at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you know someone, whether it's a family member or a friend, a close friends, and you know that they're probably struggling with this whole process, all you can do is just be there for them. Just give them a moment to just kind of process what they're going through without any judgment. And I think we're going to do a whole episode in terms of how to support friends or family of children with autism. But yeah, that's I think that is there anything you wanted to add before we come to an end?
No, I think that brings us to the end. So thank you for watching.
Thank you so much for watching, and we hope this was useful, and we hope that this is going to encourage you to feel confident to get the support you need, and not to feel shame like you're not doing much for your child, like you're not feeling like you're being a bad parent or you're not doing the best you can. We know as a parent you're doing the very, very best you can, and it's hard work. And we know this thing is really hard to figure it out and come to terms with and get your head around. And we totally understand that, because it's a journey we walked in. And even now that we are at this stage of acceptance and embracing the journey, we still go through moments. Where we feel like, so we understand what you're going through. And the only reassurance I can give you is, once you get the help you get, once you get this whole process started, then you're already kind of starting to make some progress towards what could be a very great future for our child. I'm really glad, after all the initial resistance, after all the struggles of lack of acceptance of whatever we went through for ourselves, I'm so glad we started that whole process and we got our son into all these things, because now we can now start to see the progress. Now, a year or two later of doing therapy and going through all these things, and to see him start to now take on all the things that that's happened, we can now start to receive the results. But it's just one of those things, like it's a journey, isn't it? But you gotta get started at some point. And like I said, if you're struggling, we totally understand, and we hope that this has been helpful. It's impacted. It's given you the keys you need to sort of get the whole process started for yourself. All right. Until the next episode.
Yeah. Thank you, and see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.